I'm super excited about this video, so let's just skip the intro and get started. I came across this fabulous idea while browsing YouTube. I'm going to tweak a few things and I will give you lots of tips along the way. Now first I have a piece of printing paper. This will be for the core of the bead. You can make the beads any width you like. The only thing you want to measure is the length of the first paper, and I will explain why in a bit. I have cut off a piece of the printing paper and I will have a cheat sheet with the sizes I used of the beads I made, and now I just cut off a strip the size I want the bead to be. And for the beads I use scrapbook paper, which is a great option to make pretty beads, and I love this colorful and very popular line of scrapbook papers designed by Marlene. The vibrant colors and textures give your beads a lot of interest, and I will link to those in the description box if you like to check them out. I have a bunch of the strips from the printing paper. I have cut 3 different sizes and now I'm going to cut the strips. I line up the ruler at the corner of one end to the middle of the strip at the other end. And I do this for all the strips. Now each strip is enough for one bead and I'm using the full length of the scrapbook paper. If you want your beads a bit thinner or less bulky, just use a shorter piece of paper. And yes, it's that simple. And these are the sizes beads I will get with the strips I just cut. Another great option that I have to share, especially if you are a newbie bead maker, I have found these gorgeous collage papers, and they are a lightweight paper in A4 size, and these papers are perfect for making beads. The paper is thin but strong and very easy to cut. They are also very popular and go really fast, just so you know if you are interested. And I use the full length of the paper and cut strips in different widths. I use the lines of the ruler to cut the paper, and you can use a paper cutter too. You'll also be needing some regular eyelets. The next thing you need is a roll tool. You can make a tool yourself with a skewer and some tape. I just start rolling the tape around the skewer, and the rolled up tape needs to be the same size as the outside of the little pin, if that's a good name, of the eyelet, and this way the eyelet can fall inside the bead. That makes sense, right? I use the eyelet to measure the size of the outside of the pin and add a bit more if needed, and I think that's just right there. I add another bit of tape next to it so I can make some wider beads too. So let's make some beads. I start with the white paper and roll that around the tape. And you can line it up a bit, sliding it in if needed, if you go a bit wonky. And then you add some glue at the tip and roll the last part and press that down. Then add a bit of glue on the seam and take the widest strip, just move it a bit over the glue to spread it and hold it down, and then start rolling. You can roll it back and forward to get it going and then check if it's centered every now and then add a bit of glue and roll until the end. I think it's important that when I show you something, you can do it as well and get a great result. So I have done all the thinking for you so you can do the crafting. And you're going to do the same for the second piece. Now add that on the seam with some glue and start rolling again. A bit of glue every now and then will help with this thicker paper. You can play with the length of the pretty papers. Just keep the white core as is, because that will be your base that fits inside a regular eyelet. And some glue at the end and roll it up, and there you have your bead. So I'm going to make another one, but now with the collage paper, and I have the base down already and add the first strip, and the thinner paper is easier to roll, which is great for newbie bead makers. Just check if it's centered. You can adjust while you are rolling it. Just roll it with one hand and guide it with the other one. And this is quite fun and relaxed to do. You can even do this in a comfy chair if you have everything close by. Now you can see the difference between the scrapbook paper and the collage paper. And the scrapbook paper gives you a bit bulkier and chubbier beads, and the collage ones are a bit thinner, a bit more straight and less curved. I have my heat tool on speed 2 to preheat it and make sure it's not pointing at anything. I am using ultra thick embossing powder with the bigger grains and embossing ink. I ink up the bead by putting it on a skewer and rolling it through the embossing ink. And then I roll it through the embossing powder, so there's a bit of powder all around. And then I melt the powder by rolling the skewer to turn the bead. After the first layer is melted, I roll the bead, that's still hot, through the powder again to add another layer, and then I repeat the first step. I keep rolling the bead while melting the powder, and this is quite a layer, so the melted powder can become quite fluid, and this is why the rolling of the skewer is important. You want an even layer all around, so when you see it's getting fluid, stop melting and keep on rolling the bead around so it can cool evenly. Then I put the bead aside to cool down completely before touching it. Now if you touch it too soon, you mess up the layer or you burn yourself. Now if that happens, just heat it again and the layer will melt again. This also applies when you have a bigger blob of enamel that is cooled on one side. Just heat that part again and let it even out and melt into the rest of the layer. And just don't burn yourself. Now the last step, we are going to finish the beads with an eyelet, and I have some glossy accent to work as my glue, and I add that on the side of a bead. Then I add the eyelet and clean off the excess glossy accents if there is any, and I do the same on the other side and also the same for the other bead. And then I'm going to test finally if it's open on the inside, and your fancy paper beads are done. And before you know it, you have a gorgeous bunch of beads. Don't forget to grab your cheat sheet that you can find in the description box. I'm going to use these fancy beads in next week's video, so make sure to keep on the lookout for that. And no, I'm not turning them into a bracelet. And in the meantime, make sure to keep on crafting.